Jim Jones wasn't just cheated on, he was televised. 1 minute, he was sitting in court like a king. Next, Camron hit play on a USB, and that was it. Chrissy was wearing heels and a hoodie in a hotel room with someone else. They were caught, on camera laughing and whispering, "Jim doesn't know. Let him stay stupid." Jim didn't say anything, didn't blink, stared at the screen as if it were the funeral of his sanity. The courtroom was silent, and Mama Jones froze Camron, smirking, as if he had waited 10 years for this. It began with a USB and ended with Jim Jones folded in a courtroom chair, his hands shaking and his soul halfway out of his body. The video wasn't grainy. It wasn't maybe that's her moment. It was clear and crisp, and it was shot as if someone knew it would eventually end up in court. Chrissy knew the camera was rolling, so we have many more clips. Does Cam have? Was this love or a long con? And how do you rebuild when the entire world just watched your life collapse in 4K? At 9:13 p.m., Chrissy was pulling a hoodie over her head outside the Moran Hotel in Soho, looking side to side as if the city was watching her breathe. The man who opened the door was not Jim, and inside that suite was Reggie, the person that fans had been whispering about months earlier. This was the same man who was connected to a muffled jail call that Chrissy swore was just a friend, but this video was full of betrayal in high definition, and you could feel the energy shift as soon as Camron gave the court clerk that USB. The room became cold, and Jim sat up straighter. When Chrissy entered the hotel room, he turned back toward the hallway and whispered into her phone, "Jim still thinks I'm at Mayans. He at my mice-in-laws." The courtroom shattered, not with sound, but with tension. Cam leaned back in his chair, like a man who had been waiting 10 years for karma to cash the check, and Jim sat lis skeleton had melted. There were no words or outbursts, just silence. His eyes were glazed over and his breathing slowed until he finally took a sharp breath. Collapse. One hand on his chest, one arm hanging off the chair, and the courtroom erupted. EMTs were called, and Chrissy sat still as if she were watching a scene she had seen 100 times. And that was only the first 37 seconds of the clip. Because what happened next was when the silence, the lies, and the ride or die narrative that was created for reality TV came undone. The video then cuts to the inside of the room where there is wine, 2 glasses, and a playlist reverberating from the speaker. Chrissy is laughing, her voice is low, and she is saying, "This is insiders claim that Chrissy was aware of the camera. The suite belonged to a friend of Reggie's who always recorded things for safety." However, Chrissy didn't anticipate that Camron would end up with that footage. How he got it is still unclear, but that sentence hit like a bullet because just last year, Jim was on 3 different podcasts calling Chrissy his oxygen from day one and the reason he stayed alive. Now he's hearing her say she felt dead inside with him. Had someone on the inside? Others think Reggie flipped after Chrissy dumped him last month, but Camron ended up with the one piece of evidence that no one believed to exist. It wasn't just any evidence, though. It was unquestionably scandalous and emotionally devastating. According to court documents, Cam filed the USB as part of a defamation countersuit against Jim, alleging that Jim attempted to slander his name during a VH1 production meeting back in 2022. However, it was about retaliation, and Cam didn't just serve it cold. Since Mama Jones was in, she jumped up so quickly when Jim hit the floor that security believed she was going to attack Chrissy. "You sound to my soiled, used son," she yelled as she was escorted out of the court. Outside, TMZ caught her pacing the sidewalk while shouting into her phone, "This is why I never never trust women. Hat Jim day one, she'd ruin him." Meanwhile, the judge had to pause the trial for an hour while EMTs checked Jim's vitals and verified he hadn't experienced a heart attack, just a trauma-induced collapse. The internet. Within 20 minutes of the leak, Camron's clip of Chrissy's hotel collapse revealed Neem Jones' collapse, and the memes were vicious. One featured Jim's face on a mattress with the caption, "Bro got folded like the sheets Chrissy left in that hotel." Another featured Camron grinning like Thanos while holding the USB and the final Infinity Stone. However, this wasn't just a Twitter roasting session, as the DA paused the trial again and pulled the judge aside as the 4-minute clip played. The video wasn't just proof of infidelity, it also allegedly showed possible obstruction of justice. The court was already looking into Chrissy's involvement in a closed charity fraud case. And in the hotel clip, she mentions that Reggie helped me clean that mess up. I told them it was a donation. This means that in addition to the possibility of new charges, what began as a reality TV heartbreak has now turned into a possible federal case. And Cam wasn't finished because, as the judge called for recess, Cam got up and said, "I told you she wasn't." According to a courtroom lip reader sitting 3 rows behind her, Chrissy leaned over to her attorney and whispered, "Tell the judge." That clip's out of context. Out of context, girl, it was 4K multi-angle with audio. But we're just scratching the surface because when court week comes next week, K-Cam's legal team says they're submitting 2 more clips. Loyal. I just gave you what you needed to heal. Jim didn't respond, didn't move, just stared ahead as if the entire world had turned to static. We have more. You could hear the whispers ripple through the suspicion. And Chapley, I pale, Ed pale Jim. And if even half of what's rumored on that call is true, it won't just be Jim Jones who loses everything. The entire VH1 franchise will go up in flames. The courtroom was still buzzing when recess ended, but nobody was prepared for what came next because just as everyone was catching their breath from the hotel tape, Camron's lawyer stood up and said 7 words that froze the judge in mid-sip. This is a voicemail left by Lampkin 3 weeks prior to the tape being recorded. Suddenly, this wasn't just a cheating scandal. It was about to become a franchise-ending conspiracy. The clerk played the voicemail, and wit-dropped voice was Chrissys' voice, clear as crystal, Istal, Armona. I told you that Jim finds out the ruin. Reasoning ruined. Cam can't know either. I didn't even look up, and Mama Jones had to be physically restrained from returning to the courtroom. When the tree judge paused the audio, Chrissy's lawyer frantically stood up to object, but it was too late. The court had heard enough, and Cam was locked in because that voicemail not only proved that Chrissy cheated, but also that she knew she would be caught and attempted to erase it with assistance from the top. That meant cover-up, manipulation, and possibly interference. I need you to handle that room footage. Reggie swore it was wiped and you promised to handle it. Tell Mona to try it. It's a season-long, season-ruining thing. Then the second tape began. This one wasn't from the hotel. It was from inside a trailer on the set of Love and Hip Hop New York, which had been secretly leaked months earlier by an unidentified crew member. It showed Chrissy speaking to Yandy behind the scenes. At this point, even the bailiffs looked shaken. Jim finally raised his head, his eyes hollow, and he stared directly at Chrissy as if he didn't recognize her anymore. As if the woman he had purchased rings for, cried over on red carpets, and fought producers to defend had never even existed. Dumb, idiotum, dumb, dumb. I know Jim's loyal, but loyal does not equal borm feel mame feels me something knows. If this leaks, I'm out playing with fire. You know Cam tease him. You get caught. It's not just a scandal, it's war. That clip struck a different chord because the audience was no longer just watching infidelity. They were watching strategy. For example, the entire Chrissy and Jim romance was a calculated brand, not a Jen bond. Bond. To make matters worse, exposed Mona. When she finally managed to get past security, she stormed into the hallway outside the court where TMZ cameras were waiting and yelled, "That woman ruined my son's life. She's a snake and I want VH1 to burn with her." The engagement special was filmed months ago and still promoted the forever love angle. What else had they faked by this point? Social media was in complete meltdown, blogs were on fire, and fans were switching sides in real time. Chrissy's name was trending next to liability setup queen, Judas in Lubbock Towns, and Mama Jones. Although security attempted to stop her, the harm was already done. In just a few minutes, the video went viral. One TikTok user even stitched the hotel video featuring Mama Jones's tirade and wrote, "When your mom was right the whole time." However, after the second clip's audio finished playing, Cam's attorney stood up once more, this time carrying a printed email, screenshot, and paper trail. He gave it to the judge and explained, "This is an email sent from Chrissy's account requesting footage deletion from a private server tied to Mona Scott's Media Cloud's private serve, The room went Celine again in the judge read the email. In it, Chrissy allegedly wrote, "I need that room wiped by Monday. If it G out Jim one recover. Ear neither will show L Reggie to keep his mouth shut." Chrissy's hands began to shake. Was a media hit job gone wrong? And it went. Beyond cheating. Jim got up, trembling, and asked Chrissy a single question. Was any of this real? Chrissy's lips quivered, and she looked, yes. Perhaps something would remain, but that silence was the response, and Camron didn't bat an eye. He had already won. This wasn't merely retaliation. This was surgical dismantling. Hooray, the judge halted proceedings once more, not because of mayhem, but because VH1's legal team abruptly asked to speak in court. That's right, the network was now involved, the judge said. We believe some of this footage was unlawfully obtained, and its release may violate confidentiality clauses within existing agreements, said their representative, a man in a gray suit who was perspiring through his collar. Agreements. They were in a panic because Cam had blown up their golden couple, exposed producer manipulation, and made it clear that the whole romance was a ticking time bomb. However, the judge wasn't interested in preserving TV deals, so he turned to face Chrissy and asked, "Did you try to obstruct this court's investigation by using misdirection or media suppression?" Chrissy stuttered. I objected. Eddie. The judge pressed on, and that's when he crackeracked. Ed. I didn't. Since the court had one more surprise, I was afraid of losing Jim, of being exposed, of watching the lie unfold too late. A text log from Reggie that was leaked from a burner phone and subpoenaed by Cam's team contained a message from Reggie to a friend, in which she said, "She played me too. She said she'd leave him. Now villain, in and Cam drop. Ropt.pd. I should have dropped the rest of the clips. She did not tell me not yes stressed, which meant there were more. By the end of the day, Jim left the courtroom looking like a ghost, with no Chrissy by his side, Mona or Chrissy. However, sometimes the truth doesn't care who it breaks, so Cam looked into the lens and said, no. As a result, he left the courtroom because in this game of love, loyalty, and cameras, only one man left the room undefeated, and the worst part is that it's not even over. Outside, a reporter asked Cam one last question. Do you think Jim deserved this? Cam looked into the lens and said, no. Security just saw him, one man alone, carrying the weight of a betrayal that the entire world watched live. While fans were divided online, one thing was certain, no one was buying the misunderstanding angle anymore. This wasn't a rumor gone wrong, it was an entire operation exposed. People were pulling up old interviews, tweets, and scenes from earlier seasons, rewatching the love story with the red carpet. Clips were stitched, remixed, slowed down, edited with sad music, and turned into memes faster than Chrissy could reach for her publicist Jim Jones's face. VH1's internal emails were abruptly subpoenaed after Camron's legal team filed an emergency motion. Why? Because Reggie, the man Chrissy was slinking off with, used to work on post-production, and guess who approved the video edits for the Chrissy and Jim spin-off? In HD, one clip even reappeared where Mama Jones told Chrissy directly, "You love Yorubson, my son's son. Love the camera." And now that quote was on t-shirts, but the court wasn't even close. That paved the way for a massive fraud investigation, Reggie. If producers changed plots, hid actual drama, and manipulated footage to maintain a brand that isn't just shady, that is civil fraud. If it involved contracts, ad revenue, or false representations of cast members, sponsors began to pull out. Production temporarily shut down, and Mona Scott Young unfollowed Chrissy in the middle of the shoot. You know it's bad when Mona abandons the script, but this is where things got out of control. Jim Jones's lawyer filed a motion to sue Chrissy for financial sabotage and emotional distress. Jim was now legally turning against her after years of being her partner, her man, and her defender on and off screen. The documents weren't light either. They included canceled appearances, lost brand deals, and, most damning of all, unreleased footage that Jim had agreed to film for a Netflix documentary series, but would never air due to the scandal. The estimated loss was $2.3 million, and it doesn't include what happened next when Chrissy's own ex appeared out of nowhere. Marcus, a man who was purportedly involved with her in the past, made an exclusive with a gossip website, stating, while the court was hearing motions and sealing evidence, Camron dropped his own documentary teaser, which included a 30-second Clip posted on Instagram with the caption, "You saw the courtroom. Now see the truth. Coming soon." Chrissy always had a backup plan, and he was the one who got the publicity. He even showed texts and voicemails, including one in which Chrissy allegedly said, "Jim's car is cute, I'm trying to build mine." Q. Internet combustion blogs ran wild. Chrissy murmurs, "This gets out, Jim's going to leave me. Don't let Cam find out," is shown on the teaser black screen. Then the camera cuts to Camron's face and he says, "I found out. You broke my son. You betrayed me, Chrissy. You said you'd family. Ed your year-old you daughter, or now look done. Devil in, and he wore a pink coat." That wasn't just shade. That was war. And Chrissy, she said, Mama Jones said in a live stream that night while pacing her living room while containing her anger and tears. Jim didn't comment on the video, which had 5 million views in 4 hours. Went silent. No apology, no statement, just one Instagram story with a black background and white letters. Sometimes, because silence only works when people aren't screaming, it's too late. By day 4, the court was back in session, and the judge was no longer in mediator mode. He was furious because new evidence had come to light, and this time, it came from an unexpected source, Olivia. Yes, Olivia Longot, a longtime silent observer and former cast member, submitted a sworn statement claiming to have seen Chrissy and Reggie in a that wasn't just betrayal. That was premeditated fraud. And here's where it got crazy. VH1 tried to stop the footage from airing further. They sent cease and desists to bloggers, tried to pull YouTube breakdowns, and even filed temporary injunctions to block the documentary. Camron teased. However, the internet doesn't forget, and Cam wasn't scared. He went live smiling and sipping live, rink, and said, "I'm only doing what Mona won't, Jim. He's too blind to see I'm not built for forever." Let them try. The truth has already been revealed. This is my story, not theirs anymore. In the meantime, Jim stopped going to court. Not because he didn't care, but because he couldn't handle it any longer. His team issued a brief statement saying that Mr. Jones is concentrating on his mental health and requests privacy during this time. Suddenly, the victim and the villain switched roles, with Jim going from rapper to wreck and Chrissy from fiancé to defendant. Now that the series has been canceled, one thing is certain, despite the ongoing legal battles and the fans' demands for accountability. This scandal exposed a franchise, destroyed a brand, and revealed what truly occurs when love is turned into a commodity and loyalty is turned into leverage. One fan wrote on Twitter, "It's the best. Love and hip-hop was never real. But this pain, this fallout, this silence, it's realer than anything that show ever aired." They're correct too, because only the actual harm is left after the edits are finished, and the smoke clears, doesn't fade. In the next episode, doesn't cut to commercial, and plays repeatedly whenever someone types a clip of Chrissy's hotel into YouTube. So we ask, was it worth it? The hotel secret, the camera lies, and the career crushed under the weight of betrayal? For Jim, that answer plays repeatedly in his silence. And for Chrissy, it's already written in the footage because no matter how hard they try to hide it or rewrite it, the entire world saw it, and no one is averting their gaze. Now that the mask is revealed, it was a full-blown takedown, a reality. TV empire collapsing under the weight of receipts, secrets, and a USB stick that did more damage than 1,000 fists. What happens next? Does Jim Jones walk away from all the fame, pain, and betrayal and finally start healing on his own terms? Does Chrissy disappear into silence, hoping that time will do what apologies can't? Does Camron have more in the vault? Because, let's be honest, if this was just one clip, what else might be hidden in those files? Here's what you need to do. Leave a comment with your thoughts, who you believe, next. Because if this story has taught us anything, it's that no one is safe when the truth starts to leak. Make sure you hit the like button if you are glued to the screen. Subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking revelation. And trust me, it's coming. You should also turn on notifications because the real drama, where the truth isn't edited out, happens right here. And if you're still watching, you're already a part of the story. Be a part of the story.